All right. Eric told me that he will probably run short of time, so I think we should start on time. So I'm going to tell you a story that Eric himself actually doesn't know. So Eric is a very bright young man and tester. He has been in the RC class with James Bock, where he actually very creatively is trying to solve one of the problems posed there. And something that Eric doesn't know is that James Bock is using that as an example in other RSD classes.
I know that,
so,
sure.
Oh, you knew that. Okay, so Eric is being named by James, and James expressed his admiration for how Eric thinks and how he approaches problems. So I'm very happy to announce Eric Rickard with his presentation.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. This presentation is named Making Learning My Top Priority, which is kind of a vague title. So, what is it I will be talking about today? Well, about 15 months ago, the first ever Let's Test conference was held. When I heard about that conference, it immediately grabbed my attention. It was close to where I lived. All the testers I wanted to meet seemed to be there, and just the general format set about that conference seemed perfect. So I was psyched, and I prepared myself to just bash into my manager's office and demand he sent me to this amazing conference. But that never happened. And the reason for that was I started to think about the what ifs. What if I mess up somehow? What if I make a bad impression on people I consider my role models? Things like that. And now I'm here. I live 7 time zones in, I have no idea what direction east is, but in east. And compared to 15 months ago, I have a lot more experience, a lot more skill, and especially a lot more confidence in myself as a tester. So something must have happened, because it's quite a transformation. And that's basically what I will be talking about today. Or to be more specific, I will highlight 4 decisions or practices, ideas that I think shaped that or made that happen, among other things, of course. So, but first, I would just like to give you this information. If you have any questions or comments, feedback, want inspiration or help regarding this topic after the conference, always feel free to grab me. So, Let's Test passed. And I was sitting by my computer, reading all the tweets and blog posts from the Let's Test. And I just felt empty. Like I had betrayed myself somehow. And suddenly I had this kind of powerful feeling or thought saying, you will never become the kind of tester you want to become because you don't have the courage. Okay. And I mean, I tried to ignore that feeling because it's kind of unpleasant to have. But it kept coming back. It came back when I opted not to comment on people's blog posts, even though I didn't agree, or when I just tried to use excuses to save myself from taking responsibility at work, which happened quite often. What essentially happened was it started to hurt whenever I used excuses to save myself, which was a major change. Suddenly I had to have some kind of, I had to provide the valid reason or simply face whatever it was fear or laziness, whatever reason I actually had. And I figured it sucks to admit your real reasons sometimes. And it actually hurt too much to fake it. So instead I simply had to do things. Or I felt like I had to do things, and suddenly I dared to do things that I previously had ignored. So the basics or the mechanics behind this, I think, was I started to finally monitor my own reasoning behind decisions. I started to observe why I took certain decisions, and I started to question that reasoning. So this is this is my far most abstract point, but I want to add it because it was like my start. What I think you could do now, in your situation here at the conference, is to try to be aware. You will make a lot of different decisions. Try to think about why you make those decisions, and especially when you have this gut feeling that you're not really doing the right thing. In those cases, try to think about why and question yourself. Make it hurt a bit. So, going to something a lot more practical. I like that guy, by the way. He will come up on pretty much every slide, I'm sorry. That's how much I like him. Soon after this kind of strange feeling and event, I felt a huge motivation to start to improve myself as a tester, even further than I had so far. And with this new attitude, it suddenly became things that before felt not available, suddenly felt more available. I don't know if it was related to this attitude towards excuses or something else, but it felt like I suddenly had a huge field of unlimited possibilities. And that became overwhelming. I needed something to guide myself. What can I do? What should I do? What do I want to do to self-educate myself? And that made me create my first ever skill development list, which is a really cheesy name. But basically it was a list of things or items I think I could do to improve myself as a tester. Things like attend CAST or read a book on cognitive science. And the key was to have many items. Because if I have a list with like my 5 next items to finish to become a better tester, I finish 1 or maybe 2. And after that, I lose interest. My energy is somewhere else and the list dies. So I had to have a list with a lot of different items. So I always had something I felt I could do. And if I didn't, I just added new items to the list. So I never ran out. Like I said, it felt like I had an endless amount of possibilities. So it wasn't that hard to come up with new ones. So I've used this list for over a year now. And I've learned a lot of things that helped me improve that list. My first list was not that good. One thing was I needed a variety of types of items. I needed some big-ass items. Items that, when I finished them, it would feel like I just took a great leap forward in my career. Things that provided direction, maybe you could say. But, I mean, that's nice. But you don't go and speak at CAST every day, every month, or do similar things. So I needed some small items. Items I could finish in a day or so. That I could do basically every week if I wanted, or every day, or every month. However I wanted. And of course, these items was on a scale from like almost insignificant to almost unthinkable. But the important part is I needed a variety of these. I needed a mix of these. Also important, what is big for me is probably small for someone else. And what is small for me might be big for someone else. This is very personal. I imagine Ilari, he has been to conferences forever, so it's not as big deal for him to go and speak at a major test conference as it is for me being here for the first time.
Every single time. Pardon? I'm wetting my pants every time.
Ah, that's good to know. I haven't done it yet, so I'm better than you. But at the same time, if you have less experience, it's probably a big item just to approach Ilari, for example, which is not that scary anymore for me, luckily. But I also figured I needed some other items. I had long stretches when I just didn't want to deal with testing at all. And that was okay. I think it's even healthy sometimes. But I needed something that helped me come back so I didn't lose track. And I started to add something I called momentum builders. It was basically things that tapped into some other kind of motivation or energy, whatever you want to call it, but still I could relate it to testing, and it kind of replenished my motivation pool for educating myself as a tester. Some examples. I love playing video games. I promise you, I've never ever run out of energy or motivation to play video games. It's true. So an example of a momentum builder for me is to play my favorite video game with the intention to find a bug. Or I love to program. It's like a hobby for me. And I guess for some others in this room. So I could have an item saying, build a testing tool. And that would tap into my motivation to program. So it would obviously be to educate myself as a tester and then maybe motivate me again, but it would tap into some kind of other energy. I also discovered I had certain items that I never finished. And I tried to figure out why, and I realized many of them had one thing in common. I didn't know how to finish them. One example was actually the build a testing tool item. I didn't know I had the tools I needed, and I didn't really know what else to build, why and how. So I needed something to help me figure that out. And what I did was I added items that basically they were only there to help me research information. For example, where they're building a testing tool, it could be to ask fellow testers what kind of tools they would need, or it could be to run a testing session with a goal to find tools that would help me improve my testing in that area, for example. But items simply provided information for other items. Another example, just to give you one. I had one item for attending the Rapid Software Testing course and one for the BBSD courses, two very common courses within the context-driven community. And I had an item saying, attend another testing course. I didn't know of any other valuable testing courses or courses I thought was valuable, so I never finished that one. I needed some kind of item to make me research more courses. For instance, ask fellow testers what courses they liked, or just Google and list 5 courses that seem interesting. So, another thing I discovered was the more different categories, and categories is just, there's no definite, like, these are the categories. It's just, you can think of it as a variety of items. I needed a big variety of items because that helped me to always find something to pick up. And also, every time I've added something new, it feels like a new category to the list, it boosts my energy. It might just be me, but for me that works. One example was before this conference. I was sitting down preparing my own skill development list as a handout. And I suddenly thought, what if I record myself? I could share it, or I could just look at it for myself and try to learn something about how I solve certain problems. And I started to add a couple of new items, and suddenly I felt much more motivated to finish this presentation and some other things. So that works for me. So, has everyone picked up one of these paper from the back? If you haven't, you can go back and grab one. I would like you to actually create your first draft. I will only give you like 2 or 3 minutes, so you won't be able to create some amazing big list with 200 items. I don't have one either, but if you would like to, you will not be able to do it. But I want you to add at least 8 items. These items are very personal. I will not ask anyone to reveal any of their items. So don't worry. Try to make them things you want to do. You have some help next to you. These are not perfect items. They are more inspiration. And I would urge you not to use them if you don't have to. Because I'm a bit scared if you look too much at that list, the items you add will be a bit too generic. But use this inspiration if you get stuck. I wanted to add at least one big ass item, something that almost feels a bit out of the reach right now. Something that would help you move forward. And it doesn't have to be to present somewhere. It could be something completely different, to start your own consultant firm, if that's what you think, or to write a blog post, or to ask your boss to be able to test in a different way, whatever it is. I also wanted to add at least one momentum builder. Think about what you like to do. If you like to take nature walks, maybe you could listen to podcasts while walking, or you could try to practice observations by looking at different things in the nature, and hopefully that can translate to observational skills while testing, for instance. And I wanted to add at least one research item. Something you would like to do, but you don't really have the details, and you need them, so that kind of item to help you finish something else. And finally, try to mix categories as much as you can, and you can use the list as inspiration. Like I said, please don't use it too much, but you feel free to use it if you get stuck feeling everything is basically the same, just different words. So, any questions? Is it anyone who doesn't have pen and paper or a phone or something you don't have? I don't have either, so I can't really help you, but hopefully someone next to you can. Consider it a challenge to socialize. No one else?
I need a pen.
You need a pen? Does anyone have a pen?
Yeah.
Extra? No? Ah. Good luck. If you run into problems, just come up to me. To be able to finish this presentation on time, I think I have to cut you off. I'm sorry if someone's still trying to get the eight items on paper. So, anyone who absolutely, definitely doesn't feel ready to continue would hate me for the rest of their life today. You? Okay, so you will have to hate me for the rest of your life. So, I have no idea about you, but for me, I used the list basically for three things. I've used it to get some motivation by finishing items, like ticking them off, or adding, I have done this now, and this now, and this now. That's one way to use it. I don't even do that anymore because it doesn't provide me much value, but it used to do. Another way is just pick it up and find an item and finish it, like an inspirational thing. Rarely do that as well. Happens, but usually I just have the list in the back of my head and items is finished automatically. What actually provides me the most value is what you just did, is to pick up the list and try to figure out new items, add, modify items, maybe remove items, like the creative process. So if you work like me, you've done the hard part right now. Good job. You laugh, but that's true, at least for me. The reason I wanted you to mix things and to have at least 8 items was for a micro exercise, a quick question. Look at your list and try to think about what item or which items do you think would improve you the most if you did them. What do you think would be most helpful for you? And when you're done, I want you to think about, is that what you do today? Or work towards today? Or do you do something else? Hopefully, you do exactly the things that you think provides you the most value. But when I asked myself that question, I realized, and I spent a lot more than the 10 seconds you got, but I realized I spent way too much time gathering information, especially reading books and blogs and articles. That didn't work that much well for me. I also realized I often distracted myself while gathering information, like watch a presentation in the background while programming or doing something else. Can't multitask at all. So that didn't work either. What I instead should do was to spend more time experimenting, because that's every experiment I'd ever run seemed to be stuck in my mind, and I kept learning long after they were done. Same with different exercises, like the exercises from Rapid Software Testing course. They stuck with me. And also, I realized I needed time to reflect. Less information gathering, more time to reflect. So I scheduled an hour every week where I sat down and just tried to reflect about the things I had done, learned, so forth during the last week. That made wonders for me. Something else is probably true for you, but that worked really well for me, and that was a wake-up moment. Hopefully you already do this perfectly for yourself. That would be ideal, but I imagine not all of you do that. Or I'm pretty sure not all of you do that. So, you already created your first ever skill development list. Congratulations. So now what? During this conference, you will hear a lot of interesting things. You will listen to bright people. Hopefully this is an example, but no matter what, you will listen to a lot of bright people. You will get your own ideas based on what people say or the observations you make. Try to pick up your list, and when you have something like, oh, I should really try that, add it to the list. That's my advice. Feel free to do as you like, but it's my advice to try it. And when you get home, try to finish a couple of items. See if this works. This is a rather simple tool, but it has made wonders for me. Doesn't mean it will for you, but I was surprised when I look back how much this list has meant to me. So, moving on. Soon after Let's Test. And notice it's like, I don't know, all these things so far happened within 3 weeks or something after Let's Test. So a lot of change can happen very rapidly if you just make it start. Easier said than done, but still. Soon after Let's Test, I discovered
Which Let's Test are you talking about?
Last year.
Last year.
2012.
Year before this.
Yeah, 2012. Okay. So May, so 15 months ago.
Okay.
Just like, when I refer to Let's Test, it's always from last year. I'd never been to a test conference before, and
okay, because
yeah, good question. So I found my local test community, ironically founded by one of the founders of Let's Test. So it was like a mental slap in the face, in a good way. And they had meetups once every month. So I decided to go there. And I also decided it wasn't good enough to just sit in the back and listen. I wanted to take active part. So I basically challenged myself to raise questions if I didn't understand something, or challenge things when I didn't agree. I shouldn't say it was the first time I created standards and committed to them, but for this kind of context it was. And later I created something that, cheesy name again, I call my personal manifesto. I have both my personal manifesto and my skill development list up here if you want it as an example or inspiration afterwards. You can just grab a copy. But I created a personal manifesto, rather abstract, saying things like, I strive to impress myself, not others. I strive to improve myself and others, like my moral standards. And in the end it said, I commit to these standards. Or rather, I think even I expect myself to commit to these standards. So that's established my foundation. But for anything cool to happen, I have to commit to them as well, demand certain standards. And here I would like to issue out a warning. If you decide to really commit to standards and demand certain standards, you will have to take a lot of fights. People will not always agree with you. and you will have to face consequences. I really wanted to go to the rapid software testing course. It felt like something I had to do, but my employer wasn't ready to pay, so I spoke with my fiancée. We had 2 kids at the time. She was studying, and she said it was okay to take personal savings to go there. I did. That was a huge sacrifice for me at that time, money-wise. Paid back, I think, in the end, but that's not always how it turns out. I also had to change job. I liked my colleagues a lot at my previous job, and I liked the security, my job security at that company. But I felt like I couldn't develop in the pace I wanted in that environment, so I had to change. And if you want more examples, I spoke to Simon this morning. I think you have a lot of interesting stories on this topic. Talk with Hype Schutz or James Bach. They have much more cooler stories than I have, but all dealing with consequences of standing up. So why do you do that? Why do you stand up for your standards and demand your standards if these consequences happen? Are you just like a sadomasochist in career? No. There are rewards. I was reading about exploratory testing. I was reading about context-driven testing, about lightweight reports and all these kind of things at home. When I came to my job, I had to thoroughly document every step I would take when making tests. We measured progress in tests in pass-fail ratios of test cases. I had some luck because I ended up in a team and with another tester who wanted to do the same thing as I wanted. But in that team, we demanded certain standards. We decided that this is the level. We had to take a lot of fights. We were questioned by very important people. Our judgment was questioned. We had to break rules. But in the end, we came home, both of us, feeling like we had accomplished something, like we were in control of our own destiny, kind of like. We learned so much during this experience. Suddenly taking responsibility for everything taught us a lot of things. It earned us a lot of respect in the long run. And in this particular case, everything turned out really well, and flowers and happy clouds and all that. But still, the reward is amazing, even when you fail or think you fail. Just the feeling of personal achievement for standing up is just amazing. Like I said, speak to someone like Simon. I'm sure Ilari has some stories as well. Or James. So, don't you like that animation? I'm impressed. Committing to standards is important, but over time you have to raise them. Often it happens automatically because both yourself and people around you start to expect greater things from you as you learn new things, and sometimes you have to do it manually, like in the case with my local test community where I decided to be active. The important part is that you keep raising your standards as you progress, not how you do it. So, look around you. How do you want the people in this room to remember you? Are you ready to do the things required to make that happen? Are you ready to, say, volunteer at somewhere, to go up and speak to someone? Do you expect yourself to do those kind of things? Try to think about that. You don't have to write like a personal manifesto, but just try to express something, some expectation of yourself, and really commit to it. Try it before a progress report meeting or something. That I won't provide progress in pass-fail ratio. I'd expect better from myself, and stick to it and see where that leads you. For example. So, last of the 4 chapters. Just gonna. How much time do I have?
12 minutes.
Oh, perfect. I'm on time. Could anyone provide me like the 10-second summary of the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey? Martin, you don't have to. It's okay. Could anyone else provide me? What is that movie about? Has anyone seen it? Sure.
Yeah, okay, I've seen it. Okay. Yes Man is about somebody who basically is a perpetual liar, who never holds up to anything, doesn't follow through anything. If I got the right one, I might be thinking of the wrong one. But if
I think you're right. 10 seconds.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I can't answer this one. Never mind.
Sure.
So this guy just got over a divorce from his ex-wife, and he was constantly saying no to everything, and his brother was telling him. So he went to this conference, and the conference says, embrace everything. Whenever anyone asks you something to do, just say yes. And so after the conference, he was persuaded by his friend to follow this advice. And so everything he followed was yes, which actually led to complications at the end. But it actually improved his self-esteem.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I have a little recording here for myself. So to repeat that, in case somebody missed it, or this device missed it rather. Yeah. He starts to answer yes. Great things happens, consequences happens, and in the end he finds he needs a balance. Great summary, thank you.
It was on the other day.
So, I basically felt like Jim Carrey last autumn. Not doing all this, but still Jim Carrey in that movie. And what first happened was I was offered coaching from one of the guys who just finished rapid software testing. Right now it feels silly, but it felt really scary back then. But I answered yes, because I had this feeling right when I heard it that this would be so important, so great, that I can't miss this opportunity. So I just answered yes. I wanted to change my mind a few times, but I ended up on Skype being coached. Soon after, I was invited to my first ever peer conference. Less than a week after having James as my mentor on rapid software testing, I would be his peer on a peer conference. I was scared like shit. Once again, it was just too good of an opportunity to miss, so I answered yes. Once again, I want to drop out. On that peer conference, they wanted people to give lightning talks. I answered yes again. Turned out really bad, I think. But people didn't seem to care. They actually thought it was nice I tried, and then some people even liked it. And I learned a lot from it. It wasn't really scary to fail, in my opinion, fail. So I continued. I was challenged to write an abstract for CAST, and we kind of know how that ended up. Later I had to accept to come here and present. And to be honest, I can't say for sure, but I think it felt less scary to say, yeah, I will go to Madison and talk to a lot of brilliant testers about something I have done. That was less scary than to say, yeah, you can coach me in front of my computer from Finland. Which is bizarre, but we'll get into why I think that's true and why I feel like that. So, why does this work? First of all, and I've tried to make this as visual as possible. I'm not that crazy as it may sound, but it feels like I have a little Jim Carrey in my head. And whenever someone comes with something that just seems too good to miss, he just answers yes. And I stand and like, what? I can't do that. And he said, sure, you can do that. But then you have to take the responsibility for this. Sure, I can do that. So it's a bit like delegating some of the responsibility to something else or someone else. Animation. Another thing was, like I said, the first time it felt really scary, and then it just declined. For every time I answered yes, it was less scary because I don't know, I just realized it wasn't that bad to do things. It was more the anxiety before that was bad, and when I realized that was just out of proportion, things wasn't that bad. And finally, something I think you can all recognize. When you answered yes once, it's hard to drop out. You have that friend who asks you to help him clean the garden or something. And you say, sure. And then you back home, you think, I really don't want to do that, especially not on Sunday. But at that point, it's much harder to drop out. When I answered yes to give a lightning talk, I wanted to drop out so many times during that hour. It was painful, but it was so hard at that point. I would have to admit to every tester at that peer conference, people I respected so much, that I didn't dare to do it, and that was too hard. So I stuck with it, and it turned out okay. So, for this conference, you will hopefully, if you seek such opportunities, you will have opportunities that is just, oh, I should really do that. That sounds amazing. Just try to answer yes before you think too much about consequences and see where that leads you. Of course you can screw up totally, but hopefully you don't. I had an amazing time doing this. And for this conference, you have like a wild card because you can blame that stupid Swedish tester who came and forced you to answer yes to something really ridiculous. So that's like a wild card I give to you. You have a lot of witnesses, so don't worry. So, just to quickly summarize this. 1. Try to be aware of why you take certain decisions and question that reasoning behind the decisions. 2. You've already created your first skill development list. Good job. Now, try to build on it during this conference. Try to finish a couple of items and see where that leads you. 3. Try to set some standards for yourself and commit to them. Start with something simple. Just see where that leads you. And finally, try to answer yes to something. And if the gut feeling is, this is amazing, I have to do this, answer yes before you think too much about the consequences. And once again, you can blame me for this conference, not in the future. I can do that. That's my last slide. Thank you so much for listening. Facilitator, do your magic.
Thanks, Tarek, for your very impressive presentation of your experience report, which shows a lot of courage. There are very few people that take their education in their own hands to that extreme extent. So,
it's not necessary. I mean, if you want to start slow, it's okay as well. This is rather extreme, but furious.
Good. So let's have some. 77, yes. These are meant to be used.
Everything was crystal clear, or completely uninterested.
So you take your right or left hand and you just you lift it. It's not heavy. Very good. This man understood how that works. Very nice. Okay. Any more? I certainly missed some. Yes. So 184. Sir, you go first. You go first.
You mentioned some style coaching in your talk and on the paper as well. Did you actually go through with that?
Yeah, I did go through it the one time I was invited. I haven't actually. That's one of the things I needed a research item for because it never happened because I didn't know how to start.
Yeah.
So I think I have that research item on my current list. I hope I do.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. But I have done it once, and yes, I followed through. It was amazing.
Yeah, that definitely helpful.
Yes, it was helpful. Improved my experience of rapid software testing. Just he asked about. He asked if I followed through with my coaching session, the coaching session I was referring to, and yes, I did.
All right, we have Tony. Sorry, I jumped ahead something. You said, well, we got this one. That's the rule. I should choose the order.
Life and power.
I'm using my little power.
Did you sort of form a cadence to sort of the cycle that you do this in? Do you have a bit of a cadence? Do you have a rhythm in terms of
Some kind of routine.
well, yeah, is it something that's aligned with other activities in your life, or is it just something on a regular basis?
For me, it just happens. I think you could make it a routine if that works for you. I have a hard time with routines. I don't know if that's because I'm messed up in some way, but it just doesn't seem to work really well for me. So no, I don't have a routine, but I think it would be helpful if that works for you. Yes.
177.
So my challenge was to ask a question every session today, so yay me. So the question is, so I've got my 8 items on my list. What if I only do 2 of them? Can it be demotivating if you've got this nice list and a week later you've only done 2 of them? Is there a danger in creating a list and not following through?
I think that's very personal. It's a good point. One thing, I had a disclaimer in the beginning of this presentation, but I removed it because I was very close to being too long. But yeah, it might be for someone. It wasn't for me. I've never felt that problem. In the beginning, I tried to very clearly state what I'd finished, and I was more happy about the things I had, or not really finished, just things I had done that would add to that list. But could be. But for me, it hasn't been. Is that answer enough? Good. Thank you.
003.
Was there anything that was on your list or skills that you tried to accomplish and just completely failed at, fell flat on your face at? What did you do afterwards?
I would say one of the examples would be probably my lightning talk. I have a blog post about it to explain what I actually tried to say because I just ran and rambled for 5 minutes.
But you got better at talking.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and the important part, yeah.
Have you tried, or has there been anything like a language or a skill set or something you tried to acquire, just like, oh man, I just have no aptitude for that, conjugating Latin verbs or something?
Trying to think about that. I've had things that I've not managed to finish because I don't keep much track of things I don't finish. So honestly, I don't know. I probably have started things. Of course I started things and didn't manage to finish it, but I didn't put much notice to it. So I don't have any good examples. Sorry. I may have tomorrow or something when I've thought a bit about it, but not now. Good question.
Right. I think you've kind of touched on this in answers to a couple of different people. And I'm asking just because I'm curious and I've got a whole list of things that I could answer to this question, so I'll ask you, since you're talking about self-learning, what is it that you've done that you kind of wish you hadn't done? Other than your lightning talk. If I'll even be fair and say, that's something that, let's talk about over here. I'm good at that. I'm just curious.
I'm trying to think about those kind of things. But I don't know why, but I run into very few big problems. Is it okay if I get back? If I think a bit, I can get back to you. But I can't come up with something right now, actually. But it's a good question. But honestly, I don't know. I can't think of something right now. But I'll get back to you. Good enough?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right, we have on the same thread.
So, a different take on this, and maybe this it does filter in basically in the sense that rather than what did you do or what didn't you do, or what I find it for myself, because I'm also a kind of serial obsessive compulsive autodidact as well.
Thank you.
I did certain things too, and write a lot about them. How do you prioritize or line up the things that you do? Do you cluster them? Do you find things just that hit you at the given moment? Is there a method to the madness?
You mean how I decide what to do, basically?
To give you a little context, sometimes there are certain things that I would love to accomplish. There are things that I would love to get more in depth with programming to a level where I could actually go to, say, an open source project and fork the entire repository and do something with it, substantial. Really get into that. Of course, there's prerequisites to that. For example, I would need to be thoroughly have to do A, B, C, D, E, F first. But then when I do A, B, C, D, E, F, then G is going to be freaking awesome.
I think that happens with many of the big items. Like getting here, I had to do a lot of things to even just... I had the item of speaking at a test conference long ago, but it would not have happened like 9-10 months ago. But things that happened after that slowly put me in a position, improved myself to a level where I could do that. For instance, I spoke at my local test community. I spoke at a local test meetup in another town in Sweden. I was at Let's Test this year instead. And I saw what it actually was, which calmed me down a lot for this presentation and stuff like that. So I think that's the only way. Try to break it down and just... I have a hard time to... I recognize the problem, and I think I tend to never have energy to start those. I have a few items that I know it's very unlikely I will ever finish, or at least it feels so right now. And one of the reasons is just what you're saying. The steps before just seems like too much, or I didn't have the motivation to finish them. So I think that a really not glamorous answer is I simply don't do many of those items. I have them on my list, but I rarely finish them because I never find the energy. But occasionally it happens because something changes. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Thank you.
Well, we have more in the same time.
So, with that in mind, I think you used the word at least, but it was sort of very explicit that you said one big item. Is that something that you keep as something that you try to limit yourself to, one really big?
Oh, no. You mean for the exercise?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was just to make sure that you try to add one of those. I have several on my list. So no, I don't limit myself to one. And also, I know I expect them at big and small items, but in reality, like I said, it's a sliding scale. So sure, there is probably some item is the biggest item, but it's not much difference to the next biggest item and so forth downwards. So no.
Right. Next will be the answer to all questions. Probably two.
Okay. I'm not sure if I'm repeating my question number 3. I was thinking also about failure. Did you experience failure? And how do you recover from that? Is it a topic which probably should be added in this slide sheet?
You mean how I recovered? The only, like I said before to some of the, like I answered before, the only real failure I can think about is my lightning talk. And right after that lightning talk, it felt like I would never do a talk again. And what I think it was coincidences that actually made me rebound. I had a few testers I really looked up to, role models for me, coming to me and say, I really liked your initiative. I think you had some interesting things to say, but you just rambled through, so it's hard to pick up. Could you just explain it to me now? And here are some feedback on how we could improve you in the future. The same thing. And I would like to answer your question, but I honestly don't have an answer. Maybe someone else has a good answer on how they have rebounded.
I think you already give yourself an opportunity instead of getting that feedback, because I think the people, probably I know a few of them, would like to give you feedback. Ask for the feedback.
Yeah, oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, if you do something and you just say, hey, did I do it great? And they say, no, this and that and that. Ask why. You have a failure moment, perhaps.
That's a good point. And also, I think I have a personality where I don't stay much with problems. So I have some items that I haven't finished, but it don't bother me so much. And so maybe I have an easier time rebounding from those kind of problems. I don't know. Or if it's just that I have been lucky. But I can't think of many. No, I can't provide you a better answer, sorry. But it's a good addition.
It's no problem. We all will face new failures in the future. So.
Yeah, I would love to hear from you. When you fail, please come and tell me.
You will notice when you fail.
So it seems like you've experienced a big growth during a very intense, quick, relatively quick period of time. Did you feel like during that time that you hit a time of plateau where you weren't seeing a lot of progress, or do you anticipate, that coming? And if so, how do you plan to address that?
I thought I would hit that kind of a plateau in January when I had been to once again the Rapid Software Testing course, my first peer conference. I had a new work on its way, and it just felt like this spring nothing cool will happen. I just have to cool down for a while, and then suddenly this happened. So obviously I didn't hit the plateau, but yeah, and like I said, momentum builders. I have had stretches where I felt like sometimes a stretch could be a week because I really wanted to get back, and sometimes it could be a month. But I had stretches where I just didn't have the motivation to keep self-educating myself. And in those cases, I try to use these momentum builders, which has been very powerful for me. I think, once again, it depends on how you work, but for me, that has been part of the solution to the question you're raising, I think. Was it answering that?
Okay, we have number 87, please.
On a slightly different topic, just very interested to hear the reflection aspect and the fact that you almost schedule an hour for reflection every week. And I just wondered how you structure that and what you use to reflect on, is it the last week or is it?
I try to keep it. Sorry. I try to reflect. I have it scheduled once a week, and it has happened because just that time was not available, so it didn't happen that week. And usually I try to look 1 week back, but sometimes it's things that I just finished or got a grip on that has gone on for months or so. So it depends, but usually I try to reflect on the things that I at least grasped or finished or whatever it is within the last week. So I rarely continue. Sometimes I continue on topics I've reflected on before, but with the new information I have acquired, basically. Structure was a good question. I think it comes back to the routine part. I'm not that good at structure. So I think I'm very context driven in that case. It varies a lot from time to time. But I don't write it down. I tried that for a while. I have a friend who I think shares his reflections. He was inspired by this, and he shares his reflections on Twitter. I think he still does, which I think is great. That works really well for him. I just basically sit down and do them in my head. Sometimes I make small notes, add to my skill development list, whatever it is, but I don't have any clear structure, no. But, okay.
I'm not sure if I can do that, but
it's okay.
You control it. So.
Do you keep a journal on your reflections in 1 hour? No. There is no big structure to it. You just kind of reserve yourself 1 hour and go through it. Sometimes you take notes, sometimes you don't.
Yeah, exactly. And the notes I rarely keep in a place where I would find them afterwards. So they're more for... it's more that sometimes I find it easy to just write it down. I memorize it better or remember it better, but that's basically why. But once again, for my friend, he shares them on Twitter, so he definitely keeps them both public and journalized. So that works for him. I think that's personal.
We haven't said anything.
So, kind of the same topic, as a part of that reflection, do you incorporate feedback from, I'm not sure how big your test group is or whatever, is there some regular feedback you're getting that allows you to kind of bring that into your reflection, or is it part of your coaching that you've done?
That's a good idea, but I don't do it. It's an excellent idea. I would love to just write that down afterwards. I think it's an excellent idea. No, I don't do it, but please do it, everyone else, because it sounds reasonable, it sounds useful. Thank you.
Okay, we have Phil on the same thread.
So if you read Jerry Weinberg, Becoming a Technical Leader, but he has one section where it's keeping a journal, reflecting on that. He says, if you can't be bothered to do that, if you don't follow follows through with it, then it sort of shows to yourself that you're not ready to make a change. So I've tried it a few times myself and not followed through. But I know people that have done it and are very successful.
And then once again, I think from Gerald, I think it's probably correct because I trust him in most parts. But once again, I think it's a bit personal as well. I've never really seen, for instance, I haven't really felt that the times I wrote down my journals or my reflections, that made them more powerful or useful for me compared to when I just had them in the back of my head. Or then sometimes, I mean, it could end up as a blog post, or part of it could end up as a blog post. But still, format doesn't seem to matter so much for me, but might do for someone else. So try it again.
All right, your reflection tends to be the most interesting subject. There is another follow-up question by Pete.
This is actually kind of tag teamed with your response, and I think it was Phil's question. And that's I understand about Jerry's book and about keeping a journal and forcing yourself to get better. The thing is, that's really hard. And it's actually kind of scary to do, especially if you foolishly make the mistake of going back and reading some of your earlier entries, which tends to make you not want to do that anymore. Don't ask how I know.
How do you know?
I told you not to ask that.
And I'm a tester, so sure.
But I found that a useful tool to force myself to think about things that I normally wouldn't have. And that opens up a whole new panorama.
That's good. And in a sense, not to compare it with the journals you're talking about, but the list becomes a bit of that if you keep the progress in it. If you look at before I used to have like my list on my blog. I put it down because I was too lazy to keep it updated. But on that list, I stated what I had done to finish certain items, and some of them felt silly after a while because they felt insignificant at some point. So this is, to some extent, it's a bit like a kind of a journal, depending on how you use the list. So today it isn't, but it has been. But not in the same way as Gerald described it, I think.
With the fifth bullet on the threads frame.
Just as a suggestion, and again, this is one of those things that you have to have a really, really either thick skin, a great sense of humor, or just a willingness to put yourself out there. And actually, it's the reason my blog exists. TestHead exists as this is what I'm learning, and I'm taking you along for the ride. And I basically, if I do good, you know about it. If I suck, you know about it. If I miss the mark, you know about it. And almost everything that I write is based around something I'm doing, something I want to do. I really wish I would learn this. I want to figure out why the examples in the Selenium book don't work on a freaking computer. What is it? Because the reason I mention that, and I'm bringing it up, is that it gives you an opportunity to force yourself to be accountable to not just yourself, but to a broader community. Again, you need to be a real big masochist to be willing to do that. But it is helpful if you want to do it. The second thing is that it opens you up to a broader community who, believe it or not, will jump in and help you. A bunch of times I was actually working on problems, and I was looking and said, oh my gosh, why isn't this working? And I just said, I could sit at home and I could try to figure it out, or just figure that my computer sucks, or that I don't have the right version, or whatever, and just deal with it. Instead, I said, no, hey, I'm doing this, and I've got this version of Java, and it's broke. It's not compiling. And somebody said, oh, I know why that's happening. Because something changed, and now you've got to be more strict in your typing. This is what you want to do. Because I was willing to be a masochist, if you will, and throw my idiocy out there, I got help. And it helped you jump that hurdle that I wasn't able to jump by myself. So if you're willing to go that route, it can be huge.
I agree completely with you. I have some old blog posts that are still painful to read now. I'm starting to get used to it, but it's still... but it's an amazing way to learn and to get help. So I think it would be a great topic for another 45 minutes in the future, just to say why people should try blogging, Twitter, and all these kind of things, because it's a great advice. Listen to Michael. That was smart.
Alright, so we've got 11 more minutes to go, and I've got 76, 13, and 51, so something I've missed. No? Good. Ben, number 76.
I meant mine to be a yellow, sorry.
I said 51.
Yellow for 51.
Oh, was it yellow?
Yeah, so well, it was
We're just in here. Okay, good. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add, I, as a fairly new member of the community and new to testing, having people that I respect that are still learning share their experiences, their mistakes, even if they look back and it's kind of painful for them to see their growth and maybe their mistakes they made. It's beneficial to those of us in the community coming later to learn from those, right? Those are learning experiences that we wouldn't get if those failures or mistakes were just kept private all the time.
Oh yes, and I read people like Michael and Ilari before I started to do anything to socialize with anyone else. I completely agree, and I hope I can share the same kind of thing to testers after me, and I hope they will be inspired to do it as well, like you. So I hope you will start blogging and help other people like they have helped you. Like the more experienced people have to, you can help the less experienced people. So, brilliant. Agree. If that made sense. That's how I started to ramble.
So it's 76.
Mine that thing.
You're going to answer. Okay, so then we have one next one, 13.
So, I caught it right. This is the first time you presented?
Oh, yeah.
Except for the practices before.
Yeah, I presented. To give you the full answer, as quick as I can, I have presented a couple of times at local test communities in just small scale for, 30 minutes or so, and some of my work. And I actually worked a short time as a presenter, but in a complete different context. It doesn't apply with this. But I have some experience as a presenter. This is a complete new experience.
So the reason I ask is I do somewhat of coaching of speakers, and if this was your first time in a group this size or present as a function this size, you've done very, very well. I'm very impressed.
Thank you so much. Warms my heart to hear that. Thank you. I would love some feedback as well if you have that kind of experience. Would love to hear that. Definitely.
I really second the remark from them behind, because as we spoke about, I attend a lot of conferences and I've seen people doing really, really well. So you did an awesome job.
Thank you so much.
And the tweet is viral now.
Thank you so much, Simon.
All right, unless somebody would like to fill the stack again, we're empty at the moment.
You can continue to just tell me how great I am.
I very much encourage you to talk to Eric.
I didn't say you were great, I said you presented.
Yeah, sure, throw it in my face. Thank you.
All right, thank you.